This city is nowhere near LA, as a matter of fact. There's zero California love, but there is a much more serious note involved with today's NFL team breakdowns as basically news that we never want to report. One of the most winning owners in the history of the NFL, second highest winning percentage. I actually didn't know this. Over the last 30 years, not San Francisco. You can't even mention Green Bay without first throwing in Pat Bowlen, who steps down today as owner of the Denver Broncos due to Alzheimer's disease. We go randomly through the team breakdowns, selecting team by team, basically similar to how you win a coin toss. We're just throwing numbers up in the air. Today's the Broncos, and today is a, quote, really, really sad day. Sad for his family, his wife, his 7 children. Sad for everyone in the organization. Those are the quotes from the great John Elway, currently in football operations there for the Denver Broncos. We're going to bring in not only the commissioner of the national sports radio station, but a special guest tonight, Stephen Hughes. We'll start off with you, your thoughts about a very sad day in the Denver office.
It's difficult. It's just a sad day in the NFL in general. It's kind of like losing the last couple of owners that we have seen pass away, Art Modell and Ralph Wilson. It's not like a death or anything, but it's a hard thing to get through. Lasting impact with this organization for the last 3 decades. Like you said, having the second highest winning percentage. Honestly, he has a taste and knowledge for success. He was able to bring in Peyton Manning. He was able to get the great John Elway. He was able to get teams to select teams to get players off free agency, to have great draft picks. Like most recently with Von Miller. He has a great taste for winning, pretty much. And it's a shame that his time has now come to an end because of this disease that he cannot do anything else with. But it's a sad day for the Broncos. But hopefully, in a good way, is the flip of a page to the next chapter of what the Broncos can be seen in the front office view of things.
Yeah, definitely a sad day. What's really sad is that Pat Bowlen, his family, they all have ties with Alzheimer's. This isn't the first. It's actually been a string of a couple family members in that family who have suffered from Alzheimer's disease, which makes it extremely sad that he is just another recipient of it. But still an amazing owner. The Broncos certainly take a huge hit because of the kind of not only the draft success, but there's absolutely no coincidence that he has potentially 2 of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game under John Elway and Peyton Manning. I mean, it's no secret that he knows how to bring players in because he is such an amazing personality and somebody that you'd love to play with, which explains a 61% winning percentage over his 30-year tenure as the Broncos owner. And Robert, just a sad day, but still a time to commemorate one of the better owners that the NFL has seen.
Yeah, Pat Bowlen really changed the Denver Broncos organization around, and being an owner for 30-plus years is really amazing, and it's hard to see him go, especially he's been with John Elway as the quarterback and had some really good years in that Denver Bronco organization. It's hard to see him go. It's going to be really interesting though, who's going to be the new owner for the Denver Broncos.
It is definitely going to basically it's going to ask a number of people around the United States, basically, like who's going to be the next owner. But I'm sure it's somebody within the organization, somebody who knows about the Denver Broncos, maybe even a family member. I mean, you look at teams like the Cowboys and the Raiders and how poorly they were managed, especially over the last decade. I mean, it just is the worst feeling to know that an owner that is basically running your favorite football team is first concerned about how much money he's making. This guy was team-oriented. He was player-first and just a great man in general. And the reason why he won so much is because he was somebody that was so approachable. And the NFL definitely, it's a sad day for us all. And, I mean, it's going to be real tough to move on, but it's still just a situation where he is still working very well, just cannot be the Broncos owner any longer. And I know that it actually sounds like, Steven, you know a little bit more about this, just how great of a guy he was. He's only 70 years old, though.
Yeah, this is just a disappointing. It's sad. It's such a young age. It seems like, even though he's in the elder stages of his life, it's still a very young age to have that disease. And it's a shame. It's just unfortunate. It's very unfortunate, really. It's you can't do anything with it. It's like you said, it's a genetic thing that runs through the family. There's nothing you can do about that. Everybody has, not everybody, but most people have the genetic thing that family members have. Heart disease, or all sorts of things. There's just a long list, and you can't do anything about it. And it's unfortunately affected one of the best owners that has been controlling a terrific, very friendly oriented team like the Denver Broncos, and a team that's had so much success, and it's a team that you can't really not like. It's not like a high market team like the Jets or anything, but it has a special place. The club raised the likes of Tim Tebow, Sean Elway, continuing to be leadered by one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in Peyton Manning. This guy just knows what to do, knows how to bring guys up, and he's a big loss, not just, like I said, to the team itself, but to the NFL, and mentoring the young and growing them up into becoming excellent football players.
I mean, he has created one heck of a roster here, the Denver Broncos. We'll go ahead and take a look at that in a few moments. This is the NFL Team Breakdowns on National Sports, presentation of Spreaker.com. And, I mean, what surprises me is that over the last 30 years, the Broncos have dominated the American Football Conference. They have gone to the Super Bowl 6 times and have won 2 championships over the last 30 years. That's every 5 years, the Broncos are in the Super Bowl. And, I mean, to say that over the last 30 years in the American Football Conference, nearly half of the teams in there haven't even been to one over that span, that is just amazing that the Denver Broncos have that big of a run. And, I mean, it's hard to make it when the Broncos are in there every year. But lasting thoughts here, Robert, on one of the great owners of our history.
It's going to be hard to see Pat Bowlen gone, but, the Denver Broncos got to move on. And, Pat Bowlen is a very respectable owner in this league, and always, yes, it was player first. And he was always a friendly guy, someone you could talk to, and, it's going to be hard, and the Denver Broncos, let's see how they do without him, but I think it's never going to be the same.
He's definitely going to be someone missed, but another person that will definitely not only be missed among the Broncos staff, but the entire NFL is, and it's the elephant in the room, guys, Peyton Manning. I mean, he's no longer the ripe young rookie that we saw, 1998, that's 16 years ago. The Broncos, I mean, listen, great that they brought him in-house, but it's reaching the point here where you saw it in the Super Bowl, a 44-8 loss to the Seahawks, and you just got to look at that game and say, this guy is not getting any younger, so you got to surround him with talent. And, I mean, I don't know how much longer Peyton Manning can be around to really do this.
I mean, he's had the neck surgeries, and I feel like this guy, I think if he makes one more Super Bowl run, I think that could be it for him. And Nick, it's either 1 to 2 years he's done in this league, but the Denver Broncos still have this team is still pretty solid. They have a stacked offense, of course. They're going to be having their second-year player be taking over at that running back position. The wide receiver core is still strong. And Nick, that O-line really needed to protect Peyton Manning in that Super Bowl, but when you're against the Seattle Seahawks, which is the best defense in all of football, it's going to be tough for your O-line to do anything against Seattle. And Seattle is one of was the scariest defensive football club this last season, and I believe they still are. But Nick, I mean, Denver, the O-line was something they really had to improve on, and I think they made a couple of pieces to do it.
Well, I mean, that of course is one of the big portions of what made the Broncos fall way behind in that Super Bowl. But I just want to throw this out here right now, guys. That Super Bowl was not indicative of the Broncos season. I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard Denver and so many references to the Super Bowl as being the cause for concern for their entire season. I mean, listen, this was the greatest offense in the history of the National Football League that they had statistically last year. This was a team that racked up numerous interceptions and, was one of the big turnover machines around the National Football League. I mean, this was a team stacked with talent, and you mentioned the offensive line being a weakness. Well, when you take a look on paper, this is an amazing offensive line. I mean, overall, and this to the chagrin of me being a Chargers fan, they took one of the better guards. Basically, it was almost like a gift having Luis Vasquez fall into their lap. But just reading off this Broncos depth chart, this offensive line is out of control. Even though in the big game, that was one bad snap after another for him. But Ryan Clady, Orlando Franklin, Manny Ramirez, Luis Vasquez, and Chris Clark. All five of those guys can make a case for being in the Pro Bowl. Amazing offensive line, just did not come through in the big game. And really, Steven, there's no explanation for it.
Yeah, it really isn't. Just one of those bad games. They probably weren't ready for it. Peyton Manning, I know he was definitely ready for this game. Obviously, having that championship resume, winning in 2006, I believe. But at the same time, you have to work around what you got. But in that situation, you can't really do anything about it anymore. It happened. It's a come and go thing. You got to learn from it. And I'm pretty sure Peyton Manning's going to definitely learn from it. He still has a great team that's still a Super Bowl contending team. And I see lots of great things from this team this year. But I want to bring up the point again of Peyton Manning. He's been definitely a risk that the Broncos took a couple years ago when they signed him out of free agency. He was definitely a risk. And one of the things that the risk is that he's old. When is the prime of his career going to end? Because as his age has gone old, as he's gotten older and older, this is still the prime of his career. He's still able to throw 50 plus touchdowns, throw for more than 5,000 yards. It's ridiculous. But at the same time, you wonder when's it going to end. The neck surgeries, when is that going to be coming into play soon? It has to be coming into play soon. He's just going to be getting older and older, and we're not going to see the best out of him, in the next couple of years. So that was the risk the Broncos took. It's paid well for them, but I think this is the season where the Broncos need to think: is this going to be our future quarterback for the long haul? And when I say long haul, I say next 3 or 4 years. And hopefully that is the case. But but we need to see how he is. If Peyton Manning wins the Super Bowl this year, I can see this being his last year. I think he wants to end on a Super Bowl with the Super Bowl ring on his left hand. But at the same time, he needs to be a big leader for this team. And I don't want to say I want to see the end, but the end is coming soon for him.
Yeah, it's definitely. This window is coming to a close. But I think based off of the, I believe, 5-year deal that Peyton Manning signed, I'm going to take a double look at that. I actually wouldn't be surprised if he fulfills that entire 5-year deal with the Broncos, which would leave him with 3 years left on his deal right now. He has told, yes, it's a 5-year, $96 million contract. He's entering his third, then there's 2 more after this. I actually do think that he may be around for another 3 years. I'm a proponent of a guy like Peyton Manning who says, listen, guys, even if I win the Super Bowl, I want to come back for more. And, Robert, that's what makes him so special.
Yes, Peyton Manning had his best season with the Denver Broncos. He was surrounded by a wide receiver. He was surrounded by a strong wide receiver core, a ton of talent. And, Nick, I think he's still going to have that caliber he's still gonna have that. He's still gonna be in his prime. And 50 plus touchdowns. I mean, give this guy credit. I think he can do it again. And a lot of people, this was something that was actually really interesting. After they lost that Super Bowl, they said if Peyton Manning won that Super Bowl, he would be the best quarterback of all time. And after losing that game, a lot of people questioned that. Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless, and a lot of ESPN analysts. And yes, he's maybe not I don't think he's the best quarterback, in the whole NFL, but I mean, he is one of the best, and he will be a Hall of Famer no matter what. But I mean, it's kind of sad for people to kind of just, judge off that one game.
Yeah, it's reminiscent of a Dan Marino. Definitely the best quarterback to only have one ring. But I think that's definitely something that is a real. Overall, I think that's a real legitimate question to ask. Is this guy the best quarterback in the history of the NFL? He holds a number of passing records, and you got to believe Brett Favre's passing yardage mark should be knocked down if he's able to play another couple years. That, along with consecutive starts. I mean, Peyton Manning's coming up on that as well. That went to a halt following the neck injury. But every other statistical category, Peyton Manning is all over that. And I mean, I wouldn't say he's the greatest, but definitely he's in the consideration for the top 5 greatest quarterback in the history of this game.
I was about to agree with you on that about being one of the top 5 quarterbacks, pretty much of all time. And Nick, I think this guy still has about 2 years left in him. I think even if they did win the Super Bowl this year, he would come back no matter what. And I like what the Denver Broncos did this offseason. Well, they were kind of active this year as well, kind of like the Buffalo Bills in a way. But Nick, I gotta say, I really gotta like what the Denver Broncos are doing. Yes, they lose a couple of pieces from last season, but they also gain some new pieces coming into the 2014 campaign. I really can't wait to get to that depth chart, and also what they did in the 2014 draft.
Obviously, it's a huge help when you have Peyton Manning trying to rally that free agency class and the draft class as well. And Steven, I mean, is this guy the greatest quarterback, or even just a top 5 guy?
Yeah, he's definitely a top 5 guy. I have to point out that for some people, it's going to be arguably the greatest. And then, some people are going to say, not a doubt, he's the greatest quarterback in the NFL history. But, people have their own opinions. Obviously, we don't have a definitive greatest quarterback in the NFL, not like in the NBA, where Michael Jordan obviously was the best player ever in the NBA. We don't have that type of, situation here. It's kind of like saying who's the best shortstop in MLB history. You have Derek Jeter, you have Ozzie Smith. The list goes on and on and on. It's kind of like in that situation. But Peyton Manning is definitely my top 5. But, though he's had that type of, he's not had a lot of playoff success in the, losing to the Chargers a lot. The Chargers. Losing to the Chargers a lot in the playoffs, in the wild card round and in the divisional round when the Chargers were actually good. But, look at his playoff resume. It doesn't show that he's one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. His regular season success is unbelievable, but hopefully he can change it around. Obviously he has his rounds with Tom Brady, and they're awesome. They're that's what fans want to see in the NFL, rivalries that have 20 plus meetings, and that's been the case for Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. But he is one of the greatest, but I want to see I want to see a definitive reason why he's one of the best, and I want to see a Super Bowl ring. And if he doesn't come close to that, then that's a shame.
Yeah, I think the top 5 are Joe Montana. You got to throw in Tom Brady at number 2. Number 3 is probably Dan Marino. 4, Otto Graham, and 5, I think you got to put in Peyton Manning. But on the lower tier of the top 5, as we move on to the Broncos depth chart, guys, and obviously a lot of transactions were made over the offseason for the Broncos, as they are just stockpiling, if you will, the talent in one final couple years with Peyton Manning. You got to believe that after this, the Broncos may indeed see a steep decline, but in the meantime, this is a huge draft class and transaction period. And basically, going down the list, Robert, what sticks out to you the most?
What sticks out to me the most, I guess we'll start with the offensive side. I think, of course, Peyton Manning's always going to stand out, but I think an under-the-radar type of player that's going to stand out for me is Monte Ball. He's coming off a season where he was behind Keyshawn Moreno, and now this year he's pretty much going to get the starting job. And we're going to see what he could do. At first I didn't have high hopes for him because, I watched him against Baltimore and he really struggled. Like the first couple of games in the season, I think this guy was going to be very good. But now, towards the end of the season, he really made an impact. He had like 172 rushing yards against the Kansas City Chiefs one game. So credit to him for that. And I think this guy can really take the starting job very seriously and see what he can do his sophomore season. Remember, your rookie season always isn't that great, but your second year, I think the second year can really prove what type of player you are in this league. And I think Monte Ball could potentially be the starter for years to come for Denver Broncos.
I basically throw this down to about 5 different players who I would say will help out Peyton Manning in his cause based off of these transactions. There are 5 free agent signings that I want to point out. Obviously, the big 3 are DeMarcus Ware, Aqib Talib, and T.J. Ward, all of which help the defensive side of the football. However, they did let go of Champ Bailey. They let go of some other key pieces in the secondary, which definitely hurt their case. As I'm trying to take a look at who exactly they let go, but Champ Bailey was the big one. Bringing in Aqib Talib, that definitely helps. But the 2 other guys that I want to point out on the offensive side here, one is Will Montgomery, and the second is Emmanuel Sanders, who I think is the under-the-radar free agency signing for the Denver Broncos. An amazing talent, was underutilized for the Pittsburgh Steelers. A lot of notoriety was put to Antonio Brown, but Emmanuel Sanders was pretty good too. And, Steven, I don't know about you, but I think overall this offense, I don't know if it'll exactly miss a beat, because even though Eric Decker is gone, you bring in a pretty nice number 3 target, a complimentary Emmanuel Sanders.
Yes, definitely. I really like this call that the Broncos made in getting Emmanuel Sanders. It's a great replacement to Eric Decker. Eric Decker is getting a little bit old. He is around his mid-30s, and getting a young, like you said, underutilized player in Emmanuel Sanders is huge. Also, they got on the wide receiver end, you got Cody Latimer, who was supposed to be a mid to late first-round pick. He was taken in the second round, I think.
Yeah, 50th overall. Huge. And also Andre Caldwell. I want to throw in that name as well.
Oh, yeah. I think he was a free agent signing as well, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and then on the defensive end, just obviously I have to bring up Marcus Ware, even though he's getting old, he's kind of like a Peyton Manning way. He's a little bit younger than Peyton Manning, but he's still providing that leadership, and he's still putting up some great numbers on the defensive side of the ball. He'll have to work with a new team. He's obviously, known and as been around his team in Dallas for such a long time, and now this hopefully this transition works for him, in which he can become a instant impact type of performer out there for the defensive side that I believe needs a little bit of help on the defensive line with from last year Elvis Dumerville not being around, then Von Miller getting suspended as well.
Yeah, definitely something to look out for is the problems off the field for the Denver Broncos. Obviously, a far cry from what Pat Bowlen brought to the table. He's a guy that's very approachable, but you gotta sometimes in a locker room, you're gonna have the guys that aren't exactly up to par, aren't exactly going to do everything right off the field, not be perfect people. But as you take a look at some of these guys, I mean, some question marks, but overall, I think a very good free agency class if you want to win right now, and they certainly did that. DeMarcus Ware, an amazing pickup. Aqib Talib, I mean, don't expect anything more than what you got out of a Champ Bailey, just a solid cornerback, but I think TJ Ward is a guy that will improve that secondary. Offensive side, some key pieces that will definitely help the Broncos' cause in the passing attack. But also one other under-the-radar player is the center Wilt Montgomery, which definitely will help that interior line for the Denver Broncos. Then when you take a look, and Robert's very familiar with this, the Denver Broncos draft class, even more players that will help their cause.
Bradley Roby, the cornerback that they drafted, he's supposed to be pretty solid. He's from Ohio State. Played in 12 games, started 11, but was suspended actually for the first game of the season due to arrest. And that was something interesting to watch out for. Hopefully his off-season issues don't really get to him this season. The strengths, though, his thin ankles, plays bigger than his size. He only weighs 194 pounds, kind of a small little dude, but I think he can make an impact. Don't expect him to do anything big this season, but I think he'll help out the defensive side. He's gonna probably get the starting job in the cornerback position. So watch out with Aqib Talib and Bradley Roby getting the starting job.
Yeah, just take a look at the draft for the 2014 Broncos. I think Bradley Roby, I mean, none of these guys really strike me as future great players, but I think they drafted 3, maybe even 4 starters. Bradley Roby, the cornerback from Ohio State. You got the Cody Latimer experiment from Indiana. He's a guy that, I mean, I would have been thrilled if he came to San Diego, but when I take a second look, I mean, his highlight reel is amazing, guys. I mean, when you take a look at some of the plays that he makes, absolutely. Corey Nelson. He's supposed to be, he's basically a high risk, high reward, and I think the Broncos last year, they got their big time playmaker, their linebacker, in the later rounds of the draft. And I mean, just it's safe to say that the Broncos do a pretty good job in that department, Steve.
Yes, they do. It's it's again going back to to Bolin. His he trusts his scouting staff, and he goes out there and makes some really bold choices. Going out there and picking guys that should be undrafted free agents, but he makes them 6th, 7th round picks, and he makes the most out of them. It's obviously that's going to be another thing that we're going to be missing out of Bolin is the ability to let his scouting staff really be able and do their job.
There's only one player over the last 4 years, which is fascinating, who's no longer playing in the NFL right now, and that's a 7th round Jeremy Beal in 2011. Everybody else is still on the roster, and the last linebacker, speaking of, was Danny Trevathan. They took him in the 6th round. As you take a look at some of the late round selections, I'm just going to name you guys that are in the 4th round or later that are still on the team. We're speaking of a pretty solid linebacker under Danny Trevathan, but also Julius Thomas was taken in the 4th round, Virgil Green as well. They took over a couple of years ago in 2010. They took an Eric Olson who's still playing for them. Obviously, Eric Decker was a late-round draft pick for them as well. I mean, this is a team notorious for late-round selections, and I think they got another one under a Corey Nelson. But, Robert, if there's a guy 5th round or later who really surprises you or you think will develop, who's that guy?
That guy right now in this draft right now, I would say Corey Nelson. I agree with Steven. I think Corey Nelson can make a huge impact on that linebacking core. But, I mean, the Denver Broncos have a pretty good linebacking core. Von Miller was the missing piece, of course, last season. a guy that needs to stay out of trouble this season. But let's see what the Denver Broncos can do this year. I think the linebacking core is going to be pretty damn solid, and the D line's not looking too bad as well, as they have Sylvester Williams coming back for his second season, and he got injured too. So there's been a lot of injuries on that D line. Something that concerns me going into the 2014 campaign for the Denver Broncos.
All right, it's grade time, guys. Bring out your report cards. We're going to go position by position, giving you guys the grades that we would throw out for if this were a class. And we'll start with the quarterback. I think Peyton Manning, fellas, anything less than an A would be out of the question. I give this Peyton Manning-led squad with also a Brock Osweiler on the roster. He's not bad either. I give this unit an A.
I don't really care about Peyton Manning. As first of all, like you said, an A would be what you expect pretty much. But Brock Weisler, I expect I feel like he's a really good backup. He's getting mentored by Peyton Manning. You can't really ask for that. He's a really tall guy. He's learning from Peyton Manning, and I can see him a little bit like an Aaron Rodgers in a way. I don't think he's gonna be a really good finished product at the end of the day, but at the same time, I'm ready to see him once Peyton Manning is gone. But it'll take a couple of years. I still give him an A.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to give him an A too. It's freaking Peyton Manning. He got 55 touchdowns last season. He could probably do something like that next season and had 10 interceptions, but still passed for over 5,000 yards. And he still has a wide receiver core to work with this year, and has a pretty solid running back as well. I know we're gonna be getting to that next.
Yeah, statistically, for those running backs, Denver had a great 1-2 punch. They ranked 15th in rushing the football, and when your passing game is that good, there's no reason to run the ball basically at all. But the Broncos had a number of great contributors there during the regular season. You got a Monty Ball, you got a Noshawn Moreno as well. Moreno actually led the team in rushing with 1,038 yards and 10 touchdowns. Amazing statistics. And Monty Ball, 559. That's 4.7 yards a pop and 4 touchdowns for a guy that, Robert, you believe will develop. I give this unit a B.
Yeah, I'm going to give him a B too. I think let's see what Monty Ball can do this season. I think this guy really needs to prove himself in his second season, especially when he has a starting job. And it's for him to lose, actually, this season. So let's see what happens. You also have Hillman behind him. And this guy, he's kind of an old type of guy. He only played 10 games last season. Monty Ball stayed healthy, played all 16 games, and his best game was against the Kansas City Chiefs. Had 172 yards rushing. And he had 4 touchdowns. Let's see if he can get to the end zone I think he'll maybe get to the end zone 6 to 7 times next season.
For me, I give it a B minus just because of the backups. I think Monty Ball could be not exactly like this player I'm comparing him to, but he can be similar to a Darren Sproles in this type of offense where the pass game is significant in this situation on this team with Peyton Manning. It's just like on the Saints, Darren Sproles was in a passing system with Drew Brees throwing 50 attempts per game, and I think that Monty Ball could be in that situation where he will be more of a wide receiver than a running back, but he can still be an impact player out of the running back position. If I'm comparing him to Darren Sproles, that's a really good thing. I see a lot of great things going ahead with Monty Ball, especially this season, and that's why I give this team a B minus. Their backups, not the best. Ronnie Hillman not playing a lot, and then you also have C.J. Anderson at Cal. Not a lot of experience out of the backups, and then Jaredus Williams as well. But like I said, not a lot of experience, and from the backups, that's my only concern. That's why I give them the B minus.
When you take a look at the receivers, a little more experience here. We're talking about Demaryius Thomas, Wes Welker, the 2 starters. You do have Emmanuel Sanders from Pittsburgh and Andre Caldwell behind him. And the penciled-in number 5 guy right now is the former Indiana product. That's Cody Latimer. As you take a look statistically, obviously a lot of the yardage went to a guy who's no longer there. That's Eric Decker. who had 1,288 yards along with 11 touchdowns. But what was so great about this team is that Welker also had 10 TDs. Demarius had 14 touchdowns. And you also had players that stepped up like an Andre Caldwell with 200 yards receiving, and a number of other players that definitely stepped up, including tight ends and halfbacks. As you take a look at this receiving core, I mean, still, even without Eric Decker, I give it a B+.
Actually, I was going to say B+ too. Wes Welker, he only played 13 games last season, but still had 73 receptions for 778 yards. He made the end zone 10 times out of the 55 touchdowns Manning through the season. Demarius Thomas, I think this guy's a really good player. He knows how to play in the red zone with 14 touchdowns. Yes, Eric Decker is leaving, but I don't think that was. I mean, he was kind of a big key in your offense, but I think these guys also got Emmanuel Sanders that will help out. I think Wes Welker now is going to be taking on a way bigger task, and him and Demarius Thomas are really going to be splitting that load as getting the most yards. And also when you have a Cody Latimer, I think this guy's going to develop too, but I think he's gonna have an okay type of season. And let's see what happens. I think the offense for the wide receiver core is still pretty damn solid, and Peyton Manning has a lot of weapons. Emmanuel Sanders, I gotta admit, was probably one of the best free agent pickups on the offensive side.
For me, like you said, Robert, Emmanuel Sanders was a big pickup. He's a cheap and good replacement to what the Broncos had in Eric Decker last season, and he's a downfield threat. Bless you, Robert. And we got to see a great downfield threat like Eric Decker. I can see that in Emmanuel Sanders, as a replacement, as a fill-in to Decker's position when he left for New York in free agency. So, I think both sides are happy with Decker, being happy with all his money off the great season he had with Peyton Manning and the Broncos. At the same time, the Broncos they want a cheap wide receiver that can make an instant impact, in my opinion, in Emmanuel Sanders. Plus, you also have Demarius Thomas, Wes Welker, a great wide receiving core that I'm gonna give him an A-. There are some weaknesses. You have to see what the upside of Cody Latimer is. Hopefully, there is an upside. I've seen wide receivers that are supposed to be taken in the mid to late first round. They're taken in the second round, and they get cut in their second season from the team. So hopefully there is an upside to Latimer. Hopefully he gets to get some experience in, and hopefully he'll get a spot on the team later on in the season, because in my opinion, I don't think that's going to be the case to start the season week 1.
I am concerned with how the Broncos receivers got knocked around. That for Broncos fans is scary, probably as scary as Robert Dieter's sneezing. Definitely a real disturbing sight. But as we take a look at the tight ends now, guys, obviously an amazing project, a guy that flourished in his third season, Julius Thomas. And listen, guys, why in the world is he compared to the greatest in the game, Jimmy Graham? I don't know. His statistics don't prove it, but he's still a great target. I mean, we're talking about a guy that had 12.1 yards per catch and 12 touchdowns to go along with 788 yards receiving. Fantastic numbers for a guy that barely played last season and has developed masterfully now. And, as you take a look at the backups as well, Joel Dreesen and Jacob Tamme, former Peyton Manning alumni there in Indianapolis, solid contributors for them as well. I'll give another B+ for this unit.
I think I'm giving him a B. Julius Thomas is a really great talent. I think the one reason why he's getting compared to Jimmy Graham, Nick, is because of all the touchdowns he's gotten in the end zone. Jimmy Graham is the end zone type of guy as well. And some people have said like a Tony Gonzalez. That was really interesting.
Good comparison. I like it.
You like that one?
Yeah, because these guys are red zone targets, huge guys in the end zone. And Tony Gonzalez, he's a slow guy. Not going to burn anybody. He looks like Rich Eisen running down the sideline, but is still a guy that can get it done near the end zone, which is which is valuable for any team. I think basically any ball club around the NFL should take a page out of the Broncos playbook, just going to the end zone and finding your big Julius Thomas.
And Virgil Green also, and actually Julius Thomas and Virgil Green are both 6'5" guys, so they have pretty solid tight ends, and Julius Thomas could really make the end zone, and he can make some really good catches as well. He also make some great blocks, so I will give him a B.
Tight ends, the numbers don't lie, but if you're getting thrown to by Peyton Manning, your numbers are expected to be high. Look at Dallas Clark. In my opinion, not one of decent tight end at most. He's a great blocker, but he was able to have such terrific numbers throughout his career because of Peyton Manning when he was in Indianapolis. So I'm gonna give this tight end core a B-. I want to see a little bit more out of them.
Definitely, we've seen plenty out of that offensive line outside of the one game that they really gaffed. Unfortunately, it's the biggest game of the season. But you take a look at Chris Clark, Luis Vasquez, Manny Ramirez, Orlando Franklin, and Ryan Clady. And guys, this offense reminds me a ton of the Patriots in 2007. This team should still be very good this year, even with some of the key departures. But Manny Ramirez, I think, is key coming in at center. Will Montgomery as well. Former Redskin, and the guy that's anchoring it all is Ryan Clady, one of the best left tackles in the game. I'd give it an A-.
I'm going to give him a B+. I don't think this is the best O-line in the game, but these guys just really struggled against the Seattle Seahawks. They're going to have another test against them this season, and it's going to be really interesting to watch. They are playing the NFC West this year, and Nick, I think that's going to be the test to see how good their O-line is. They're going to be going against a tough Rams defense that has a pretty good pass rush. You're going against the Arizona Cardinals. You're going against the 49ers and Seattle. And Seattle, you really struggle against. I wouldn't be surprised if they struggle against the San Francisco 49ers as well. I give them a B+.
Nothing to compare to the San Francisco's O-line. San Francisco O-line, I think, arguably is the best in the NFL. But for right now, they're able to really keep Peyton Manning in check. Obviously, you haven't heard Peyton Manning complain about his neck. Yes, his own line's been that good, but at the same time, let's see a little bit more out of them. I want to see a lot more out of this offense. Best in the NFL this, best in the NFL that. I know the stats represent that and all, but come on, let's see it. Let's see it again. See consistency. I give this O-line a B.
Well, overall, Steven has just been a huge pessimist here for the Denver Broncos. He's given B- and, just absolutely, I think, atrocious grades for him. But this offense rounds out at about a B to B+. That may surprise a ton for being the number one offense in the NFL last season. But listen, I think Eric Decker is huge. He's leaving. I think this offense, they basically struck gold with Peyton Manning and how good he was. I think you can't expect the Broncos to be number one in the NFL, but they still are a top 10 offense. Absolutely going to be a team that is going to run up that scoreboard. But still, you can't expect 38 points per game again. Can you wrap your head around just how amazing that is? But I still think the Broncos will be great. Along with that defense that adds a number of key contributors, I think the offense takes a step down, but maybe the defense takes a step up. Take a look at DeMarcus Ware, the defensive line, but don't forget pot roast Terrence Knighton there at the D tackle spot. Sylvester Williams and Derek Wolfe are your other penciled-in starters, but don't forget about Kevin Vickerson. He comes over for the Denver Broncos and should be a very good addition there for them.
I think also a big guy on the D-line is, too, Nick, you're kind of forgetting, is Malik Jackson. This guy had 6 sacks last season for 42 tackles. I think that D-line, really has some depth to it, and that's what I like about it. It's not like these 4 main guys are going to make the impact. And DeMarcus Ware was one of their best pickups in free agency. I'm going to give him, I think I'm going to give this unit a B. The young guy on this squad is Sylvester Williams, and he's coming into a sophomore year. I'm really liking really liking the talent out of Sylvester Williams. If he could stay healthy, and I think this guy can have more sacks this season. I think he can get 4 to 5.
Going to be definitely a huge addition for them. Giving out grades, guys, I give him a B+.
For the D line, definitely instant impact pickup with DeMarcus Ware, Derek Wolfe, Sylvester Williams. The list keeps going on, and it's a good thing. I like it, and I'm gonna give them a B+. Since I've been so pessimistic lately, I'll be really nice on the defense.
Robert, your grade.
I give him a B.
Definitely going to be an interesting situation there. I think if you can point out one weakness, it might be on the linebacking core. Even though Danny Trevathan, I love the progression out of a guy reaching his 3rd year. Former 6th-round draft pick. Nate Irving as well. He's a tough run-stuffing man, which complements the big pass-rushing ability out of Von Miller. I give this unit a B.
Nick, I'm going to give him a B- because of Nate Irving. I think Nate Irving is kind of the weakness on that linebacking core. I want to see a little bit more production from him, but I mean, Von Miller, he got suspended last year, but that's not going to be the case this year, which is great. And it's going to be really interesting what this linebacking core can do. And just, the linebacking core, they don't really have much depth, so that's something you can be a little worried about if someone gets injured or gets suspended, potentially. But I think the Denver Broncos, yes, this is probably their biggest weakness.
Yeah, Nate Irving only had 41 tackles. I don't know what the heck's going on with that. Danny Trevathan at 129, which leads the team. Tackles aren't a huge indicator, but also throw in, he only had 1 sack all year, 0 forced fumbles, and as you take a look at the total turnover department, 0 picks and 0 fumbles forced. So I think overall, that may be the weakness, and statistically, these numbers aren't impressive at all.
And Danny Trevathan, this guy keeps on developing every year. Could this guy maybe get over 135? You never know, because he's the main guy in this linebacking core. But I think when you're going to have Von Miller all next season, I think that's really going to help you improve that linebacking core and really help out Danny Trevathan and really just carry the load.
Yeah, he led the team in tackles. He led the team in forced fumbles as well with 3. He had 2 quarterback sacks, and he even led the team with 3 interceptions and had 1 return for a touchdown had he not thrown the ball backwards at about the 1-foot line during the opening game of the season. So that would have led the team as well with a return score. But still a great guy. Should be somebody that you can expect to be a valuable part of that Denver Broncos linebacking core, Steven.
I'm gonna make this quick. Miller and Trevathan, I can see them being, the next Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman. But I know it's a long shot, but let me continue. But they're not like the 49ers at all. They don't have, an Ahmad Brooks and Alden Smith that are right next to them, guarding the way at the end. So, for the Broncos, the Niners are obviously at A for linebacking because they're legit, and plus the fact that they have Pro Bowlers. But for the Broncos with 2 legit linebackers and 2 weak ones, I'm gonna go bold, C+ here.
Huge grade for Stephen Hughes. He's been dishing them out all night. As we take a look at these interceptions, not a single pick was made by Champ Bailey. He was a guy that was told to have struggled the entire year. They do bring over an Aqib Talib to man that strong cornerback spot. Last year, Aqib Talib, he rallied 41 tackles along with 4 picks, which led the Broncos based off of 2013 stats. But also, don't forget about a Bradley Roby. He maybe will start at cornerback because the names behind him are not impressive at all. Jerome Murphy, Kayvon Webster, Tony Carter, and Jordan Solon, who was another rookie that they took, the Broncos did. And, guys, not exactly exactly a strength there for that football team. I give it a a B minus, only because of the big plays that can be made out of an Aqib Talib.
All right, Nick. Also, you left out cornerback there. You want to tell me who that was?
Bradley Roby, huh?
Nope. Chris
Harris. He's back on the team, right?
Yes, he is. And he had 3 picks last year. I know he's probable to start day 1 right now, which is a little bit concerning, especially when Bradley Roby could potentially be starting week 1. And, you know, if Chris Harris starts, I think that cornerback position will be fine. I gotta go, Nick. I actually gotta go with the C+ here. I don't know what to expect out of Bradley Roby. Yes, he's kind of a small guy, which kind of does worry me in this league, but he does have speed, which I like, and I think he's not going to be, I don't think he's going to get a lot of interceptions, but I think he can break up a lot of passes this year.
Everything that Robert said, because there's not a lot to really point out in a good way. There's a lot of weaknesses, and I'm going to go with Robert's pick. I'm going to go C+.
There are absolutely, I believe, no weaknesses out of the safety core. Raheem Moore, he's a great pass coverage guy, along with TJ Ward, who can stuff it up there and stop the run. And, I mean, this is just a unit that you have to expect will make huge plays. And also, the third man of the crew, that is Duke E. and Nacho. He's the free agent acquisition the Broncos made, and I think they improved on a position that they desperately needed to upgrade, and they did just that. I give this unit an A.
Ooh, thank you. I'm going to go with an A-. I really like TJ Ward from the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns actually had to go and get Dante Whitner because of TJ Ward leaving, but TJ Ward brings a lot to that defense. But, you know, Nick, to be honest, I think that was really, you know, him and DeMarcus were the only 2 big players in that whole free agency for that defense. But, you know, TJ Ward does, you know, he can make some tackles, and he can also get the picks as well. He got 2 interceptions, a fumble recovery, and he got 2 touchdowns. So return to the house. Not too bad, and I really like what you get out of a Raheem Moore. This guy can really make some tackles as well, but I think he still has some developing to do. And, you know, we only had 44 tackles for 2 interceptions. I know we only played 2 games. I mean, he only had 2 interceptions, but he only played 10 games. I think this guy can have way better stats if he played the whole season.
Definitely going to be an interesting situation there for them. As you take a look at the special teams, I'm going to give them an A because I love what Matt Prater brings to the table. He set the NFL record for the longest field goal in NFL history, 64 yards. And also you throw in a Britton Colquitt, amazing at the punting position. Wes Welker is solid at punt returner and kick returner is an Omar Bolden. Expect just average things out of him, but still a penciled-in starter and should make some big plays every once in a while, but definitely going to see some improvement under the coaching staff led by John Fox, head coach over there. Adam Gase is your offensive coordinator. And on the defensive side, a guy that I really like, Jack Del Rio, is your defensive coordinator. I give the coaching staff a B+. They aren't going to be the top 5 in the league, but they head a unit that is pretty darn good.
I think I'm going to give them a B. I think they're a consistent coaching staff, but sorry, Steven, but the special teams, I got to say I really like Wes Welker and Matt Prater. I think Matt Prater, I remember when he had to kick that field goal 64 yards away, and I remember he told reporters my leg was just numb when I kicked that. He literally had to put so much power in that, and he got it done. So I think I'm going to give him a B+ in the special teams unit.
We're talking about coaches.
And special teams.
Yeah.
For special teams, I'll give it an A-. I had Prater on my fantasy team, so it was good for me. On that 64-yarder, that was a good 15 points for me. But yeah, obviously one of the best. You know, definitely someone you want to pick up a fantasy. A great, awesome field goal guy. You know, he's lucky to be on a team where the high altitude really, gives you a definite advantage on field goals against your opponent. And after that, special teams, offsetting, all the success that Matt Prater has. Great punter. It seems like with the draft picks that you have, they're able to really show you, hey, I can bar, I can do this, this, and this, and they've really been really able to do that, and it's been awesome. So for special teams, I'm gonna go with a B+. Let's go, Sheen. They're in the low tier, my top 5, so I'm gonna give them an A-.
Stephen Hughes, it's been a pleasure. He's the MLB analyst. We'll check in every now and again. Obviously, make some great shows here on the National Sports Radio station. Stephen, thank you for your time, and the Denver Broncos could not be nearly as complete without you on board.
Oh, sure, yeah. I just give them, B's and C's all around. But thank you for having me on the show. I'm going to try to do some shows. I always say that, but I want to sincerely try to get some shows in before the start of school in mid-August. For me, I want to thank Robert Dieters for his time, his service for national sports, and for having me on the show. Pretty much, he invited me to get on and get on and get off. As simple as that. So I hope to be on soon. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Obviously, a pleasure. We're going to go ahead and go to our favorite portion of the show. Obviously, for those of you who tune in just every now and again, like Stephen Hughes, you understand exactly how important this is. So, Robert, I don't know if you're ready, but I certainly am. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Denver Broncos game by game. We predicted nearly the entire schedule, but we'll go ahead and get you going with week number 1, home against the Colts, before they are home again to take on the Chiefs. Both Robert and I think they go 2-0 during those first 2 ball games, which sets up a week 3 contest on the road against the Seattle Seahawks.
And I gotta say, when you're at Seattle, the Broncos are a great team, but I just don't see them winning at Seattle. The fan base is going to go nuts, and that defense, the Legion of Boom, is going to take down Payman and his wide receiver.
Sorry for the loud music there. We'll tone it down just a bit, but I have to agree with you, Robert. After 2 straight wins, Seattle's going to be at home. That 12th man's going to be rocking. It may be a playoff-caliber atmosphere and a playoff-caliber loss for the Broncos. So week 4 is a bye, very early week off there for Denver. Then they'll have their next 12 opponents in a row here. They'll start off with a week 5 game at home against the Cardinals. I give them a win, while Robert gives them a loss. So right off the bat, the commissioner, 2 straight losses, he has them at 2-2. Week 6, at the Jets, we both give them a win. So that brings up a Week 7 game, the Broncos at home to take on the 49ers. And frankly, even though San Francisco, they retooled their defense, I still think Denver is too good. I give the Broncos the win. And Robert, again, I'm going against your former team and giving the Niners a loss.
You give them 2 straight losses to the St. Louis Rams, bro. Come on. Get a little bigger, but it's your opinion, so I'm gonna be against it. To be honest, this is kind of a toss-up. Cornerback position for the Niners, it's gonna be brand. It's gonna be kind of a new branch in a way, and it's gonna be a tough game. And I gotta say, at the end, I see the Niners just winning that game. I know it's at Denver, but I think this is the game where Denver just struggles.
Yeah, the Broncos do have their games where they do not put it all together. Of course, in Week 8, they take on a Chargers team that beat them in Denver. And personally, I know it's at Denver right now, in San Diego, but I think the Chargers get it done. I give San Diego the win over the Denver Broncos. They know them very well. Meanwhile, Robert gives the Broncos the win, which means that right off the bat here, the Broncos, in Robert's estimations, they're an impressive 4-3, while I give them a 4-3 record as well. Week 9 at the Patriots, a first of 3 straight games on the road. We'll start in New England.
Nick, I gotta say, the Patriots really did something with their secondary this year, and it's gonna be a tough test for me, man. These are the 2 best AFC teams in that whole conference. This is a really tough game. And to be honest, it's kind of like when you go to this game, you're really going to know the outcome of it. But this is such a toss-up. I really like the Patriots this year. I like what they're doing. But I've probably got to give Denver the win because their wide receiver core is so much stronger than the Patriots. I know what Tom Brady could do with wide receivers, but I still think Peyton Manning still has the better team.
The Patriots did win that game last year in New England. It's a rematch this year, but they only won because of that horrific play there in the red zone off of the punt that hit off the guy's knee. Horrific situation there. It's a rematch, and very likely that the Broncos win that game. Week 10, I think the Broncos win at the Raiders, while Robert actually gives them a loss. The Raiders do play the Broncos very tough. Meanwhile, Week 11, I give the Broncos the loss at the Rams. Robert gives them the win. So that sets up Week 12, home against the Dolphins, and I think we can all agree it's a victory for Denver.
Oh yeah, Denver is stacks very well against Miami High. That's not going to be a close game.
After a 3-game road trip, I think Miami will have no clue what hit them as the Broncos finally have a home game. Then they go back to the road. They'll take on the Kansas City Chiefs. We both thought that would be a win. Then Week 14, we both thought it'd be a win again, home against the the Buffalo Bills. Then they travel for 2 games on the road. Week 15 at the San Diego Chargers. We both give the Broncos the loss, and that sets up a Week 16 game at Cincinnati.
And Nick, I already know what you're going to get for this game, but Cincinnati Bengals, it's, this team, I don't see them, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs this year, so I don't see them beating the Denver Broncos, so I get the Denver Broncos the win.
Yeah, at this point, both of our estimations heading into Week 16, we both have them at 9-5, which is a far cry from being secure in the NFL playoffs. We saw the Patriots not get in at 11-5. Same with the Cardinals. If they would have went 11-5 and won the last game, they wouldn't have been in. Week 17, home against the Raiders, we both think that that's the game they get the W, and they both move to 11-5, which is, what a surprise, Robert. Exactly the same record for both of our predictions, which means that the Denver Broncos, we have secured the entire AFC West on our NFL team breakdown segment, and both Robert and I think that the Broncos go 11-5 to win the division. And what's very interesting is you have the Chargers at 10-6, which means that it goes strictly down to the very last game of the season, and the Denver Broncos get it done home against the Raiders. You got to believe that those 2 games against the Bengals and the Oakland Raiders, too easy of games for them to give that up and give the season away.
Nick, what's been really interesting, we covered this whole AFC West, and I learned a lot from all these teams, just getting to know this. The Kansas City Chiefs, they're kind of going to be falling apart. I think this season they're going to start to fall apart. Maybe they make the playoffs, they squeeze in. The Chargers are an up-and-coming rising team. Phillip Rivers had a great season. He could do it again. And the Oakland Raiders signed a lot of veteran guys, but this team is in a tough division, unfortunately, and I think that's what hurts them the most. Denver Broncos, I think, are the best team in that division, no doubt about it. But Nick, I gotta say the Chargers, I think they're going to put up a good fight in the AFC West. It's probably going to come down to the last game.
Yeah, I think overall the Denver Broncos on paper are the best team, but when you take a look at the division, I think the Chargers will give them the run for their money, not only in the regular season, but I could easily see San Diego playing Denver in the playoffs as well. It'd probably be at the Broncos, but still a fantastic game. Based off of my estimations, the Chargers go 9-7 to squeak in the playoffs again this year. They will be 2 games back of the Denver Broncos, so too much to come back from. But San Diego is going to be one of those teams that you can expect to be in the playoff hunt for years to come. A perennial playoff team, but partner, the Broncos went 13-3 last year, and we have them losing 2 more games. But when you take a look at some of the key pieces that went away, and you had to set NFL records for them to make 13 games. You can't expect for them to do that again.
Losing Eric Decker is kind of big, I think, and then Keyshawn Moreno, you lose him. Monte Ball has to take over that charge. I think Monte Ball, he's going to struggle in the beginning of the season like he always does. But, it's going to be tough this year. And I think the Broncos, I think they're going to be downgraded this year a little bit just because of losing just some key players. They lost Champ Bailey, and I think if they had Champ Bailey and a key, if they had him and Aqib Talib working together, I think that cornerback position would be solid. But that's not the case this year.
Yeah, Noshawn Moreno is a very good running back that they lost. It's going to be tough for them to make up the difference there, especially with a running game that was just middle of the pack. I mean, they had a passing offense that set records, which obviously put very few men in the box. And for them to only rack up as many yards as they did, definitely a cause for concern. But still a unit that isn't half bad. We are nitpicking on what is a playoff team again this year and a AFC West champion for what we expect to be the second consecutive season, or excuse me, even the third consecutive season, I believe. So this is a team that, while may not get the number 1 seed because you got the Patriots, expect the AFC North to put up a strong fight, and then the Colts. Those are going to be the competitors. I mean, the Broncos very easily can be the number 3 seed, which, isn't a cause for concern. This is still a playoff caliber team, but, we're nitpicking, but I think there's a reason to do so, as the offense rounds out at a B+, and the defense at a B. Good, but not great, I think, for Denver.
Denver, they're still going to be a great team, but that AFC, man, New England and Denver, that's going to be, I think, a great game to watch out for. And I always love watching those two teams go at it. And Nick, I think the Patriots could go to the Super Bowl this year. I think that maybe they lose, in the regular season, but they come back in the playoffs and get a big win over Denver.
Those will be some fantastic matchups. We expect here on the national sports to cover the playoffs, to predict the playoffs. Once we get done with all the teams, we are nearing the end. Beyond belief, I can't even believe it. We're nearing the end of the NFL team breakdowns. We've gone through all the teams. The entire AFC West is done. In the AFC East, that division is nearly set. We have the Jets at 8-8, the Bills at 5-11 or 7-9, based off of Robert's prediction. So that will be a division to look out for in the postseason. But as we go on to the near future, and speaking of the Patriots, we'll get to them coming up next time on NFL team breakdowns. But, for Denver in the playoffs, is this a team that can reach the Super Bowl again? That's the big question. And, Robert, do you have the answer?
Yes, I do, but that'll be the next show, which I believe we'll have this week, so I can't wait to get my answer then.
Overall, Denver is going to be a fascinating team to look out for. Lasting thoughts based off of my end as you just take a look at the roster. And I actually do want to get this one final thing in. My under-the-radar, Emmanuel Sanders. What about yourself?
Monte Ball is my under-the-radar. I got to say MVP this year. It's going to be Peyton Manning, no doubt. This guy is, he's going to make all the passing TDs this year and make all the wide receivers look really good. And, Wes Welker and Marius Thomas are going to be threats this year, and they're kind of that 1-2 punch there. And probably the best free agent acquisition, I got to say, is T.J. Ward, and really helped out that safety position.
T.J. Ward is going to be fantastic coming up this season. Definitely going to be a player to look out for. Expect an increase in statistical interceptions coming out of this team, but also one more player that they lost that we never mentioned on this show. The guy that also led the team with 3 picks is Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie. He had 3 INTs, 1 return for a touchdown, and he was a dangerous return man with the football in his hands. I think the Broncos will certainly miss the production they had out of DRC.
Nick, their cornerback position is kind of brand new this year. They drafted a rookie in Roby, and then they got Akeem Talib, and then they got Chris Harris. So I think the cornerback position is going to be very interesting to watch out for.
Tune into the Denver Broncos this coming season. That's it for the national sports here on Spreaker.com. Make sure to catch all the NFL team breakdowns as we'll go ahead and wrap up this show with a California Love presented by Tupac, as we're going to end it here presented by the national sports radio station. And Denver Broncos, they're going to be a fantastic team. Make sure to tune into the Patriots coming up next. So long, guys. Don't drink and drive, or don't drink at all, and have a great Wednesday night, ladies and gentlemen.